Imagine holding in your palm a single coin, small enough to vanish between your fingers, light enough to forget it's there, yet heavy with the power to unravel an empire that ruled millions, stretched across continents, and believed its reign would last forever. This isn't fantasy. It happened. In the year 69 AD, just 4 decades after the birth of Christ and during one of the most turbulent decades in Roman history, a modest bronze coin, no larger than a quarter, stamped not with the majesty of Rome, but with the defiant face of a provincial rebel, ignited a chain reaction that brought the Roman Empire to the brink of total collapse. The coin bore the name of Gaius Julius Civilis, a Batavian chieftain who had once fought for Rome, wearing its armor, commanding its auxiliary troops, and swearing loyalty to its emperors. But by the time this coin was struck, Civilis was no longer Rome's servant. He was its nemesis. And that coin, it wasn't just money. It was a declaration of war, a symbol of sovereignty, and a psychological bomb dropped into the heart of an empire that had long assumed its dominance was unassailable. Most people think empires fall because of grand invasions, epic battles, or economic meltdowns over centuries. But history hides its sharpest truths in the smallest details. Sometimes, the fall begins not with a siege, but with a mint, not with an army, but with an idea pressed into metal. The story of how a single coin toppled an empire isn't just about Rome. It's about the fragility of power, the contagious nature of rebellion, and the terrifying speed with which trust once shattered can evaporate like morning mist. To understand this, we must travel back to the Rhine frontier, a soggy, forested borderland where the Roman world ended and the barbarian wilds began. Here, among the marshes and rivers of what is now the Netherlands, lived the Batavi, a Germanic tribe famed for their swimming prowess, their cavalry skills, and their uncanny loyalty to Rome. Unlike most conquered peoples, the Batavi weren't taxed. Instead, they paid their dues in blood. Every Batavian male of fighting age served in Rome's auxiliary forces, often as elite cavalry or river scouts. They were so trusted that Batavian units guarded emperors in Rome itself. Civilis, their leader, had risen through Roman ranks, earning citizenship, adopting a Roman name, and fighting in Britain under Suetonius Paulinus during the brutal suppression of Boudicca's revolt. He knew Rome intimately. Not just its legions, but its arrogance, its internal rivalries, its blind spots. And in 69 AD, Rome had plenty of blind spots. The year became known as the Year of the Four Emperors, a dizzying, bloody carousel of civil war after Emperor Nero's suicide. As the center tore itself apart, the edges began to fray. Civilis saw his moment. Officially, he claimed to support Vespasian against Vitellius, but his true aim was Batavian independence. He began rallying tribes along the Rhine, using his insider knowledge to exploit Roman disarray. But words weren't enough. To unite fractious Germanic and Gallic tribes against a common enemy, he needed a symbol, a tangible representation, a new order. So he did something unprecedented. He minted coins. Not crude imitations, but carefully designed pieces that mimic Roman style, while erasing Roman authority. On one side, the profile of Civilis, clean-shaven like a Roman general but with a stern native dignity. On the other, a seated figure, perhaps Victoria, the Roman goddess of victory, but now repurposed as a symbol of Batavian triumph, or possibly a personification of the Rhine itself, the lifeblood of their homeland. Crucially, these coins bore no image of the emperor. In Roman ideology, coinage wasn't just currency. It was propaganda. Every denarius circulating through the empire carried the emperor's face, his titles, his divine mandate. To mint a coin without him was not just counterfeiting. It was sedition. It was saying, his authority ends here. And because the Batavi controlled key river crossings and supply routes, their coin began to circulate. Roman soldiers stationed on the frontier, many of them demoralized, underpaid, and confused by the rapid imperial changes, saw these coins. Auxiliaries from other tribes saw them. Local merchants saw them. And in that moment, something shifted. The coin whispered, Rome is not eternal. Another power is rising. The psychological impact was explosive. When Civilis launched his revolt in earnest, he didn't just attack forts. He targeted Roman legitimacy. He ambushed legions by luring them into flooded terrain only Batavi swimmers could navigate. He turned entire auxiliary units, men from Gaul, Germany, Britain, against their Roman commanders by appealing to share grievances and newfound hope. The coin was his calling card, proof that resistance wasn't just possible, it was already happening. News spread faster than legions could march. In Gaul, the Treveri and Linguans tribes, long chafing under Roman extraction, saw the Batavian success and minted their own coins, declaring a Gallic empire under Julius Sabinus, a local noble who claimed descent from Julius Caesar himself. Suddenly, the entire western flank of Rome was in open rebellion, each new coin a spark setting dry grass ablaze. Rome's response was swift but chaotic. Vitellius, then emperor, dispatched legions from Britain and the Rhine, but they were exhausted, divided, and unprepared for guerrilla warfare in wetlands. Civilis outmaneuvered them at every turn, even feigning surrender to lure Roman forces into traps. By the time Vespasian finally secured the throne in Rome, the Batavian revolt had grown into a full-blown crisis. Entire legions, once symbols of invincibility, were besieged in their own camps like Vetera, where 2 legions were starved into surrender and then massacred. For a few terrifying months, it seemed plausible that Rome might lose not just a province, but the entire strategic Rhine corridor, opening Gaul and even Italy to invasion. But empires don't crumble from a single crack. They fracture when the cracks multiply and intersect. The Batavian revolt, for all its brilliance, had limits. Civilis couldn't hold a Gallic coalition together. Tribal rivalries resurfaced. Vespasian, unlike his predecessors, was a seasoned general who prioritized stability over glory. He sent his best commander, Quintus Petilius Cerealis, with fresh, loyal legions from the Danube. Cerealis didn't just fight, he negotiated. He offered amnesty to tribes that abandoned Civilis, isolating the Batavi. In the end, Civilis wasn't defeated in a grand battle but worn down, his allies peeled away by Roman diplomacy and brute force. He vanished from history, possibly killed, possibly exiled, but his coin had already done its work. Rome eventually crushed the revolt, but it never fully regained the psychological upper hand. The myth of Roman invincibility was broken. The lesson echoed for decades. If a small tribe on a soggy frontier could mint its own money and rally legions against the emperor, then no border was truly secure, no loyalty absolute. Future emperors doubled down on control, more surveillance, more centralized power, more suspicion of auxiliary troops. But the genie was out of the bottle. The coin of Civilis became a template. Over the next century, dozens of barbarian leaders would mint their own coins during revolts, each one a tiny act of defiance that chipped away at imperial unity. Fast forward to the 3rd century, when the empire nearly collapsed under the weight of endless civil wars, hyperinflation, and external invasions. One key symptom? Regional warlords minting their own debased coinage, rejecting the central authority in Rome or Antioch. The empire didn't fall in a day. It unraveled thread by thread, and the first thread may well have been that bronze disc struck in a Batavian marsh in 69 AD. The deeper truth here isn't just about ancient history. It's about how systems of power rely on shared belief. Money is one of the purest expressions of that belief. A dollar bill, a euro coin, a digital Bitcoin. None have intrinsic value. Their worth comes from collective trust in the system that backs them. When that trust fractures, even slightly, the consequences can be catastrophic. In 2008, it wasn't bombs that nearly toppled the global financial system. It was the realization that trillions in mortgage-backed securities were built on lies, that the emperor, so to speak, had no clothes. Like the Roman legionaries seeing Civilis's coin and wondering, if he can make money, who really rules here? Modern investors watched Lehman Brothers fall and asked, if this pillar is rotten, what else is? The parallels are uncanny. Civilis understood that to challenge Rome, he had to challenge its symbols. Today's disruptors know the same. To challenge a system, you must offer an alternative symbol of value, whether it's cryptocurrency, a new social currency, or even a viral meme that erodes trust in institutions. The Batavian revolt failed militarily, but it succeeded culturally. It proved that legitimacy could be minted, not just inherited. That idea never died. It resurfaced in the American Revolution when colonists minted tokens declaring liberty instead of the king's head. It echoed in the French assignats, in the Confederate dollar, in the Bitcoin white paper. Every time someone creates a new form of money outside the official system, they're repeating Civilis's act of defiance. And that's why this story matters, not because a coin literally destroyed Rome, but because it exposed Rome's vulnerability, its dependence on perception. Empires, financial systems, even social orders, they all run on narratives. When a single object can puncture that narrative, everything becomes unstable. The Roman Empire lasted another 400 years in the West, but after 69 AD, it was always fighting a losing battle against the knowledge that its power wasn't divine or eternal. It was contingent, fragile, and could be challenged by a man with a die, some molten bronze, and the audacity to imagine a world without Caesar. So the next time you hold a coin, look closely. Whose face is on it? Whose authority does it proclaim? And ask yourself, what would it take for someone, somewhere, to mint a coin that says something different? Because history suggests it won't take an army. It might just take one small, defiant piece of metal, and the idea it carries.